2, 1. Hello everyone, Nick the DM here with another Planar Dragon for 5th edition. It's been a while since I've done one of these. Quite a while. I've been busy. Anyways, today we'll be taking a look at the Pyroclastic Dragon, so let's get into it. Now, the Pyroclastic Dragon appears in both 3.5 and 4th edition, but while they may share the same name, these dragons are distinctly different. The 3rd edition Planar Dragon, which I'm covering in today's video, is actually a dragon that is comprised of muscle and tissue and scales, while the 4th edition dragon is classified as an elemental with the dragon keyword relating it to the dragons, and it is made of molten rock, a layer of stone, and a white-hot core. I may make some videos on the 4th edition Planar Dragons and stat them for 5th edition, but that's still up for debate. That's when I'll cover the 4E Pyroclastic Dragon. Now, with that out of the way, let's check out the 3.5 version of the Pyroclastic Dragon brought to 5th edition. Pyroclastic dragons are creatures of elemental fury, embodying the destructive and chaotic forces of fire, earth, and rumbling thunder that can move earth and shake continents. Pyroclastic dragons have all the subtlety of a volcanic eruption. They may simmer and hiss for a time, but when they erupt at last, their fury is unmatched. They are native to the bleak eternity of Gehenna, an infinite plane of volcanic earthbergs and infernal lava. Now let's stop there for a moment to look at the plane of Gehenna. I won't cover the plane or the layers in their entirety, but I need to mention a few things. Firstly, Gehenna is a lawful evil and neutral evil outer plane. Gehenna has 4 layers. First is Callus, then Chamada, then Mungoth, and finally Krengath. Pyroclastic dragons love swimming in magma and make their layers in caves formed or carved from volcanic rock. If they are found on the material plane, they will only dwell in volcanic regions. Since not every layer of Gehenna is the same, and because of the Pyroclastic dragon's preferences, they will be found more commonly on certain layers. This isn't mentioned in the Draconomicon, this is just me using some analysis and logic to help make other Dungeon Masters' jobs easier. The most volcanically active layer in Gehenna is Chamada, the 2nd layer, filled with so much volcanic activity that there is barely any actual land. The second most is Callus, the 1st layer and the most inhabitable to other creatures. Then Mungoth, the 3rd layer, which shows much less volcanic activity than the first 2 layers and is cold enough that snow falls almost constantly. And the last layer, Krengath, was completely devoid of volcanic activity. So, more often than not, Pyroclastic dragons will inhabit the first 2 layers, and the odd one may be seen in Mungoth the 3rd, but it'd be hard to imagine that any of their species would willingly go to Krengath. The final thing I would like to mention about Gehenna is that all 4 layers have gravity that operates on a 45-degree angle objectionally to the ground, meaning that every layer is like scaling a mountain, and falling or tripping almost means certain death. Creatures with a climbing or flying speed have a much easier time here, and creatures with both, like the Pyroclastic dragons, thrive. Pyroclastic dragons have solid builds and are powerfully muscled, so much that they convey a sense of immovability. The scales of these dragons resemble cracked obsidian and magma, forming patterns of black, red, orange, and grays over its entire body. A Pyroclastic dragon's wings, however, are a dull ashy color and almost appear to be made of ash or soot. But despite their appearance, these wings are capable of bearing the weight of a Pyroclastic dragon aloft. Pyroclastic dragons enjoy the taste of meat, but can subsist on a purely mineral diet if necessary. Now let's check out the stats I made to convert the Pyroclastic dragon from 3.5 to 5th edition. I'll just be covering the ancient stat block in the video to show you how powerful they can become. Ancient Pyroclastic dragon, gargantuan dragon, lawful evil or neutral evil. Has an armor class of 21, that's natural armor, has 388 or 21 d20 plus 168 hit points, and it has quite a few movement speeds. It has an on-foot speed of 60 feet, a burrow speed of 45, a climb speed of 40, and a fly of 60. So a much lower fly speed than most other dragons, especially when looking at their 3.5 stats. They're also labeled as a clumsy flyer, but they make up for that by not only having 4 different movement varieties, but their on-foot speed is much higher than other dragons. For ability scores, they have a 30 strength, 10 dexterity, 27 constitution, 18 intelligence, 14 wisdom, and 20 charisma. So pretty much in the positives for all of them except dexterity, which is common for most dragons. Saving throws, it has proficiency in strength, constitution, and charisma, and it has proficiency in only perception for skills. For its damage immunities, it has immunity to fire and thunder damage, which can make it pretty formidable, especially in terms of basically removing a lot of the smite spells. For senses, it has a blind sight of 60 feet, dark vision of 120 feet, and a passive perception of 19. So pretty easy to sneak around. Well, I say pretty easy, I'm assuming at high levels. If you're encountering this at a lower level, it can be quite difficult. And knowing my party, they won't sneak around this at all. They'll try to charge into it. Languages, it only speaks Draconic, and it has a challenge rating of 21. Now for its abilities, it has quite a limited number of abilities, especially compared to other planar dragons I've covered. And that is, firstly, it's innate spellcasting, charisma-based, DC 20 plus 12 to hit with spell attacks, and can innately cast the following spells requiring no material components. 3 per day each, 3 per day for one spell, produce flame. Once per day each, pyrotechnics, shatter, wall of fire, firestorm, incendiary cloud, wall of stone, and power word stun. Now I should also mention, if you decide to be very mean to your party and throw a Great Worm category Pyroclastic dragon at them, so the oldest category before they start to deteriorate with age, they have access to once per day Meteor Swarm, which is generally pretty devastating, especially to really any party, but at this high of level they should be able to take it. And it also has the Pyroclastic dragon anyways has slightly lower health than its recommended, and I'll get to that in a second. Next, it has legendary resistance 3 times per day. If it fails a saving throw, it can choose to succeed instead. And then lastly, it has magic weapons, so its weapon attacks are magical for the purposes of like overcoming resistance and immunity and all that. Then we go to its actions. Firstly, it's a multi-attack where it can use its Frightful Presence and then makes 3 attacks, 1 with its bite and 2 with its claws. An interesting thing about the Pyroclastic dragon is that certain dragons, especially throughout editions, will have their Frightful Presence come to them at different ages. With 5th edition, you see it pretty consistently around the same age category. But Pyroclastic dragons start as a wormling with their Frightful Presence. Maybe it's their appearance, maybe it's their absolute just chaos and wrath, but regardless, they were listed and I kept it as such. So for its attacks, it has a bite, which is a plus 17 to hit, reach of 10 feet, and does 21 or 2d10 plus 10 piercing damage. Claw attack, plus 17 to hit, reach of 5 feet, 17 or 2d6 plus 10 slashing damage. Tail attack, plus 17 to hit, reach of 15 feet, does 19 2d8 plus 10 bludgeoning damage. Frightful Presence, DC 20 Wisdom save within 120 feet, frightened for 1 minute, or they can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of their turns. On a success, they're immune for 24 hours. Just the normal stuff. Next up, we have the breath weapons. Recharge on a 5 to 6 on the roll of a d6, and it uses one of the following breath weapons. It has 2, like most planar dragons and the metallic dragons. Firstly is its superheated ash breath. The dragon exhales superheated ash in a 90-foot cone. Each creature in that area must succeed a DC 23 dexterity saving throw, taking 49 or 11d8 fire damage and 49 or 11d8 thunder damage on a failed save, and half as much on half as much on a success. So it's more of like a shout mixed with a roar mixed with a superheated ash cone, as it deals thunder damage as well. And that's a pretty cool attack. This next one, its disintegrating breath, was a massive pain to try and convert, and I'll talk about that after we're finished describing it. Disintegrating breath. The dragon exhales a beam of destructive energy in a 90-foot line that is 5 feet wide. Each creature in that line must succeed a DC 23 dexterity saving throw or take 72 force damage on a failed save, or 16d8 force damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. If this damage reduces the target to 0 hit points, it is disintegrated. Even more than that, if the target fails the saving throw, it must then make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw or be disintegrated. A disintegrated creature and everything it is wearing and carrying, except magic items, are reduced to a pile of fine gray dust. The creature can then be restored to life only by means of a true resurrection or wish spell. So, the most painful process in transferring this is, number one, there are not a lot of fail or die attacks in 5th edition. And the way it was mentioned in 3rd edition was identical to the Bodak from 3rd edition, which when converted to 5th edition was an ability that dealt damage on a success and on a fail half damage, but then if they failed by 5 or more, they instantly died. I tried doing that, and that worked perfectly fine for the Wormling and Young, but then when we got to Adult and Ancient category for the Pyroclastic Dragon, the saves became so high that failing the save by 5 or more basically immediately became a death sentence to anyone without proficiency in Constitution saves. So instead, I adapted it a little bit, so I made it, first you have to fail the dexterity saving throw. So if you succeed the dex save, you only take half damage. If you fail the save, you take full damage, but then you get to make another save, which is only a DC of 10, basically like a death saving throw, and then you'd be disintegrated if you failed that. So I tried to balance it as much as possible, and that's why it's average, the dragon's average potential damage and hit points are much lower than its actual recommended challenge rating, and this is for the sake of it just being a destructive force of chaos and pain, and this was horrible to try and convert. I'll probably end up doing it again sometime soon. But anyways, so yeah, if they're reduced to 0 hit points, they're disintegrated. If they fail a DC 10 Constitution save, they are also disintegrated. Now this is consistent throughout the different dragon ages, which honestly for Adult and Ancient isn't that bad, because like if you have a properly balanced team, those with proficiency in a Constitution save, if they actually put ability score improvements into Constitution, or at least kept it fairly high, can almost just not fail this. Other classes who are like further in the back, who maybe aren't heavily into Constitution in that, or don't have a proficiency in a save like that, will most often not get caught in this because it is a line attack, so it's kind of hard to angle anyways. So I tried to balance it as best I could. This is the best I could come up with, and that's where it's going to stay. Of course, anyone can change it to however you want. If you want to be particularly cruel, you can do it the same as the Bodak, or if they fail the fail by 5 or more. But what did I say there? If they fail the save by 5 or more, they will die instantly, or be disintegrated anyways. And then lastly, for the Pyroclastic Dragon, we have its legendary actions. I took a bit of liberty in creating some of these. Firstly, it has its Detect, which is, so it gets 3 legendary actions and gets 3 options. Firstly, it's Detect. It makes a Wisdom or Perception check. This is pretty standard. Then it has Erupting Fury. It costs 2 actions, and the dragon can make a claw attack against every creature of its choice within range. So this is kind of going back to the fact where it will simmer and hiss, but when it erupts and gets really angry, its fury is unmatched. This can be devastating if it's surrounded, but it can't move to make these attacks, so it's only whatever's within reach. It only gets to make it once, doesn't have advantage unless the barbarian has Reckless or something like that. So overall, it's fairly okay. It increases potential damage by much, but it's realistically, it's not going to be doing all that damage consistently. And then it has its tail attack, where the dragon makes a tail attack. Now, I took away its wing attack for 2 reasons. Number one, its wings can hold its body aloft, but still, it's not a very good maneuvering flyer. It doesn't move very fast for flying. It doesn't have much dexterity. So unlike other dragons who can fly faster, farther, all that, and would have a wing attack, This one I just removed the wing attack because it has trouble flying anyways. So be that as it may, I just took some liberties with that. Alright, that is it for the Pyroclastic Dragon. A link to the Wormling, Young, Adult, and Ancient stats are in the description for the Pyroclastic Dragon. Go check those out if you're interested, or if you're a DM who wants to be particularly cruel to their party. If you enjoyed this video, please show your support by liking and subscribing for more videos like this. Also, leave a comment if you have any ideas or other creatures you'd like me to cover. And if you'd like to see me stat the 4th edition Planar Dragons, leave a comment about that. At least all the Planar Dragons that are different between 4th edition and earlier editions, otherwise I'll keep them the same. Anyways, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.